Good morning and welcome back to my garden. This is Shannon from Grow Roots and this is my July front yard garden tour. So yeah, here we go. We have had a few weeks now, 3, maybe 4 weeks of 100-degree plus temperatures, excessive heat warnings. We have high humidity, and so the heat index has been up to 115. The temperatures have been up to 105, and so during June I told you that June front yard garden tour might be the peak. But here it is in July, and as far as my front yard goes, there are some great things happening and then some plants that are struggling, and I will bring you all along for the ride. And excuse my voice, I've been a little bit sick this week, but I'm feeling better today, and so my voice is a little bit froggy, but bear with me. Okay, so we're starting off where I always do. I always start off with Lambo, but if you've watched any of my previous tours, you know that Lambo's in a different spot now. I used to have him over here, right in this spot is where he would normally be, but my zinnias, Thumbelina zinnias that are only supposed to be 1 foot to 1.5 feet tall are 3 feet tall, and so you wouldn't be able to see Lambo. So we have moved him over to this spot right here underneath our Vitex tree and right next to my burgundy glow ajuga and my hosta and my ground cover Vinca major, and I think that's a really good spot for him now. So I will start on this spot of the garden. I'll actually come back, maybe I'll start all the way over here so you can see my beautiful endless summer hydrangea. I think it's about 4 years old and it has grown massive, and this year hasn't been a big flowering year for it, but I have gotten some blooms. You can see this one is a little bit of an older bloom, and it gets a tiny bit of afternoon sun, a little bit of dappled afternoon sun, and so the petals are scorching a little bit. But that's totally expected in 100-degree plus weather. But you can see I've got some new blooms coming. That one's going to be huge. Oh, look at this one. Oh, I love it when they do this. It's slightly blue, slightly pink, and guys, I have to say, this one's planted in the ground, and this might just be my first partial blue bloom. They're usually always pink. I don't recall adding soil acidifier at all to this guy, but it's beautiful. It's kind of partially blue, partially pink. Oh, I love that bloom. I just noticed that it's partially blue. And I've got some blooms there, another one over there, so it's actually doing pretty good. There is some Vinca major ground cover that is filling in beautifully under here. So this was a vision that I had. This area was all, under this Vitex tree, and even before that it was under a crepe myrtle. We had to take out the crepe myrtle because it got crepe myrtle bark scale really, really, really bad, and we couldn't get rid of it. So anyway, this has always been a dappled shade environment, and nothing would grow. My annuals wouldn't grow. This was before I learned that, there's different microclimates in your garden. So while annuals will grow great here in full sun, they're not going to grow great under the tree because they're not getting as much sun. So you have to use different plants. So I started this vision of having a ground cover here of shade tolerant plants. And it has really, this is one vision that I've had that really came to life in such a short amount of time this year. So the Vinca major is over here, and it's just totally filled in. There's more like around the hydrangea, but here is burgundy glow ajuga, and here's another burgundy glow ajuga, and this was one plant that I separated into 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3. And I put it around this hosta that was planted from bare root last year, and everything has just really filled in. And I like to see the difference between this ground cover, which is more viney, and it vines out and roots itself, and it's kind of fluffy and just kind of maybe not total cover, but it still expands really quickly, whereas the Burgundy Glow Ajuga is a full ground cover. Like there's no open spaces here. It's happy. It's also getting bigger, but it will cover the ground completely, and I'm very excited to see what that does next year, especially hoping to see it bloom. That will be beautiful. Coming up on the Vitex tree, getting kind of a better angle of it. It's growing beautifully. I had to trim off a couple of branches. You could see right there. I had to trim these. It was coming out this way over the garden, and then it was really just, when we had a lot of rain in late June and early July, and so this thing was completely flopping over. And anyway, it's not in bloom anymore. I've trimmed off all of the old blooms that I could, but you can see these are too tall for me, so I haven't trimmed those off, but it's getting ready to bloom again. So pretty soon you'll see some pretty purple blooms, and it'll be back in bloom. It's beautiful. I love this tree. Now let's talk about the zinnias. I mentioned these are Thumbelina zinnias grown from seed. And I really imagine them as this low growing, 12 to 18 inch border in my garden with some taller plants behind it. And that's just not what my vision turned out to be this year. And there's that Gulf fritillary butterfly. One thing about it is the butterflies and the bees absolutely love it. All day, every day, I could come out here and I can find at least, 1 or 2 butterflies and 1 or 2 bees that are on this plant. There's a bumblebee. So even though it didn't match my vision of what I wanted for this front garden border, I chopped this all the way down. I think it was in my June video, or maybe I did it shortly thereafter. Chopped it all the way down in hopes that when it grew back, it would grow back bushier, but more, lower ground, more true to what it's supposed to be. And it did grow back bushier. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's still 36 inches tall, which is what I counted before, like especially this one. This is a good 3 feet tall right here. However, it's gorgeous, and it kind of almost creates a secret garden look. You can't see the plants that are planted behind it because it's so tall. This is kind of funny, when I cut these down, I picked up some low growing zinnias from, I don't know, some of them are from some of them were from Lowe's, some of them were from Callaway's. These are Zahara zinnias. So this is what I had visioned for a low growing zinnia in the border, but this is the only one you can see. And then I've got my white petunias as well, which are doing okay. But the rest of the little zinnias that I had planted, here you can see. Look at that. They're so leggy, and they're just like, help, I need sunlight. These other guys are just swallowing us. And they're still alive, but they're so leggy, just reaching for that sunlight. And we got a black-eyed Susan popping through here. So a black-eyed Susan plant is planted right behind it. It's just kind of mixing in with those zinnias. I love that. They are so beautiful. And these again are grown from seed. Last year I grew them from seed and planted 2 here. And right about this time, after they were done flowering, they died off. It's like they got powdery mildew maybe. And I have suspected this plant is susceptible to powdery mildew, but in the front garden we have switched to drip line irrigation, and so there's no overhead watering except maybe what they get from the grass sprinklers, but other than that there's no overhead watering other than rain and grass sprinklers, and the garden is doing fantastic. These zinnias are also prone to powdery mildew, but showing no signs of that, which I've had that problem in the past. And then, so you see how strong these zinnias are, and then you can see as we get into the shade of the Vitex tree, this last row of zinnias just doesn't grow as tall. It doesn't get as much sun, and that's okay. they're under the tree anyway, and it helps you. There's one of the Zahara zinnias that I had tried to plant in there. So yeah, just beautiful. Okay, so coming inside the garden, which is like our secret garden because you can't see it anymore from the street view. Here is the lamb's ear, which is doing fantastic. And then you see my May night salvia, which is coming back into bloom. If you remember, I cut the May nights. I have a video about this, and I cut the May night salvia all the way down after it finished its first bloom, and here's its next bloom. And here is my daylily. So I think this, I didn't even pay attention to what type of daylily this was. I just saw it. It was a peachy pinky color that I loved and planted it bare root spring of 2022. So this is its second growing season, and it's finally flowering, but definitely more of, I think, a spring bloomer than a summer bloomer. But you can see there are 2 new blooms that are starting there. I think the other ones are the old blooms, but there's 2 new blooms. Here is another Rudbeckia. Beautiful back there. Coming back here, there's one of the Zahara zinnias that is kind of not making it because it was swallowed up by the Thumbelinas. I'm coming over here. Look at this. There's 1, 2, there were 5 butterflies here just a minute ago. It's just amazing. I just love it. I could sit there and watch them all day long. Okay, here is my perennialized mum that was in bloom, and I just cut that back. It's yellow mum, and the blooms are old now, but I cut those back. Here's a great view of the second flush of May night salvia. I love the way it looks next to the zinnias and with the yellow backdrop of the sunshine ligustrum. And oh, yes, okay. So here's more lamb's ear. Oh, look at this butterfly. It's flying all around me. It's so beautiful. There's one over there. I'm sorry. If you don't like butterflies, you may not like this video. I love, love, love butterflies, so I'm going to get distracted. Okay, so here's my lamb's ear here. And then that pink plant is Gomphrena. I planted 4 Gomphrena in a straight line all back here. This is the only one to make it, and it was because they were tiny little seedlings, and then they got swallowed up by the monstrous growth of the May night salvia. But this one persevered. He sang the song I Will Survive, and he did, and it's just beautiful. I did a video very recently of Gomphrena that I grew in a container in my backyard that's just spectacular, and this one's doing really, really well as well. My sunshine ligustrum is doing lovely. I just had to trim it. Wow, what a superstar it is. And it's just a beautiful bright color, evergreen color interest. It's just amazing. I highly recommend sunshine ligustrum. So coming back over, this was Storm Cloud Verbena from Proven Winners, and I was so impressed with it at first. It has put on so much growth, but I'm not as impressed with it as I thought I was going to be now that we've had the extreme heat that we've had. My experience with the Storm Cloud Verbena, it's on drip irrigation. It's getting plenty of water, yet every day at the end of the day, if we have 100-degree plus temperatures, it is struggling. Like, you could see the leaves. There's not a lot of blooms, and when it does bloom, it's like these brown, it's just not thriving. And there's a lot of new growth, and it's trying to bloom again. There's 1, there's 2. We'll see what these blooms turn out like. And then coming up here in this container is the pink bandana lantana. And again, with the heat, I find that the leaf curl, I think, is due to the heat. It's also coming out of bloom and reflushing. So it's not at its peak right now. It's just, I wanted to show it to you because, you know, when you have plants they're not always going to be in bloom. Sometimes those blooms have to, you know, fade away, get rid of it, and then the plant has to regenerate itself and rebloom. And that's exactly what this is doing. You can see all of these sweet little pink blooms are starting all over again. So probably in a week this will be full of blooms again, but for right now you just kind of can't see a whole lot of it. And here is my absolute favorite, my limelight hydrangea that I'm training into a standard. It's all staked up because I need the branches to not flop and I need them to stay in shape so that I can build that tree form that I'm looking for. I did a video on this just recently as well, so please check that out. But I explained everybody needs a limelight or a panicle hydrangea. You can grow panicle hydrangeas almost anywhere in the United States, and as long as you have the right information about them and grow them in the right conditions, they're amazing. My favorite. Down here is the Proven Winners Super Petunia Lovey-Dovey, and you know, the petunias aren't super heat loving. They do kind of get, you know, a little bit leggy and branchy. I probably need to come trim this up, but I really do love how it's cascading down the side of the pot. You can't see the pot anymore. And then back here you can see I've got my vinca that I've grown from seed, and it's finally starting to pop up and grow well, so that pot's looking pretty good. Moving over to I've decided to call it a flower tower. It's my 3-tiered tower that I popped in this location. On the bottom is planted in the ground. We have mums, and I've cut them back several times, and they just keep coming back bigger and better than before. One thing I absolutely love is on this bottom tier, I planted Proven Winners Super Petunia honey, and the honey was, you know, it's planted in there, but it is such an innovative plant, a smart plant, because it started growing over my mom's and to get the sunlight. And I actually really love this effect. It's kind of intermingling with the mums and coming out, and I really, really love it. It's doing really well. And then the roots are shaded, which I actually think helps it right now. Up here, we've got our Super Petunia Persimmon, which has been a rock star. It is starting to struggle in the heat. I tried to just give it a little trim, and that was only about a week and a half ago. I also fertilized it at the same time, and I just did a little trim. I think it needs a really, really big trim, because when you go in here, you can see like the brown. It's, you know, oh yeah, look at that. Like it's needing a little bit of help. So I think I'm really gonna try and rejuvenate it and trim it up severely. And it's mixing in with the Super Bells yellow from Proven Winners. One thing that I love that the Super Bells are doing is they're actually trying to climb over here along my vine. This is one vision that I had and was so excited about it, and it just has not come to fruition this year. And it's okay. I've tried twice with 2 different plants. It's not the right location for either plant. So if you remember, I had a purple bell vine that was here, and it did not survive. I think it got some type of fungus. I'm not sure. It's an interesting situation because it's kind of planted in mostly shade, and then when the vine grows out, it's sunny right there, but then it's shady right there a little bit. Like, it's an interesting type of situation, but I've seen so many gardeners be able to grow vines up trellises along the sides of their house, and it does fine. And both vines that I have tried, so I pulled out the purple bell vine when it died, and I put in this English ivy, which is a shade plant. So the heat and that sun right there is just baking it, and it has not grown at all, and it has been probably a full month, so this plant is not going to work there either. I I will have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what vine I'm going to do there, because I'm not ready to give up on this espalier trellis vine look. But you know, that's gardening. Lots of patience, and you try something, it doesn't work. You try something else, it doesn't work. You just keep trying, right? So up here on this top tier, I have, this is Super Bell's Cha-Cha. The variety is from Green Acres, and I think it's been a pretty big rock star. Now, one thing it is doing with the heat, it's losing its color. The pink color is fading away, and it's much more yellow, and it probably could use another dose of fertilizer. It's getting fertilizer every week to 2 weeks, a water-soluble fertilizer, and again, I probably really could rejuvenate this and give this a huge trim back as well, and I think that will help it. I've got my geraniums back here that are, you know, doing just fine. They're continuing to bloom. I've got new blooms coming. So yeah, that's working out. And along the side of the house here, I've got my boxwoods, and I haven't decided. These were itty bitty babies that I planted last year, and I'm going to form them into a type of topiary shape, but I haven't decided what. I think what I want to do is spheres, but my husband would really like them to be a conical shape. And you will see when we get towards Christmas time. I'm going to film it, even though it's not super garden related, but my husband is Mr. Christmas. He loves Christmas, and he loves decorating the outside for Christmas. So putting them into a conical shape, like a Christmas tree shape, would be excellent for his design, and I think that will work out. So most likely that's what we will do. Coming up here onto my porch, you will see my coleus that I grew from seed, Pentomix coleus, and it's doing well. This one especially, it's mostly shade all day long, so it's handling the heat quite well. I have decided to start pulling the blooms. As much as I like it, it does create a nicer, bushier coleus, and so that's what I've been doing. But wow, look at that view. It's beautiful. And then it has this Swedish ivy spilling out of the container as well, and you've just got these huge, beautiful, like, goodness, pink, magenta, yellow, green. This is one of my favorites right here. It's just kind of gotten bushier and taller and filling in, and it's gorgeous. Here is my Big Daddy hydrangea, and it's getting some new blooms. You could see I usually have this guy with soil acidifier. I have not done that this year. So the blooms are more kind of pink. They started out blue, and then they've turned pink as the season has gone on, and that's okay. Pinkish, purplish. Here's a new bloom, and that's more, I don't know if you could see it in this angle, but pinky, purpley. And this new one is definitely pink, no doubt. But it's getting big. It's beautiful. And here's what the older blooms look like. I think some people will deadhead these. I am not going to, because I have discovered if I let this go, it will turn like a magenta color when we get into fall and winter, and I think that's absolutely beautiful. You could see here too, like, see these like purpley magenta tips. It really is a beautiful color when you let them go, and it kind of shows these were the early spring, or I should say mid to late spring blooms, and then this is how much this plant has grown since then. It's unbelievable how this plant grows. It's just beautiful. I love this hydrangea. And then I've got this one that is new and has probably tripled in size, but it has not bloomed, and there are no blooms coming on it. But it's absolutely spectacular. If you look at it, it's just, you can barely see the pot anymore. I love it so much. And just for the foliage, like, it doesn't have to bloom for me, although I would be so happy if it did, but I just love it. It's absolutely beautiful. And this, I believe, is a type of lace cap hydrangea, but I won't really know. It wasn't labeled when I bought it. And so we'll just have to see. It's variegated, obviously, but I think it's a variegated lace cap. And maybe eventually we'll be able to see it bloom. Here's my other coleus planter, all planted from seeds, Pentomix coleus again. I love that each plant is so unique. Like it's so different. So awesome and beautiful. Lots of color. And then I'll show you lastly my houseplants that I decided to put out here to kind of, you know, decorate the entranceway just a little bit. I haven't done any other decorating. I really would like to put a really small bench there or something, but still have not gotten around to that. But look at this. This is a Monstera cutting. And gosh, I put this Monstera, I planted it and put it out here in maybe mid-spring. And usually when you do cuttings like this, it was mature. This was what it looks like before I cut it. But I didn't expect this new leaf to be as mature as it is because it was a cutting. And look at it. Oh, it's so beautiful. And then this was another one. Probably not the same cutting, I don't think. So you can see this one's not as mature there because it's from this plant. I put a couple cuttings in here. But yeah, that Monstera is loving life. I also have some Tradescantia, Zarina in here, and Apothos in here, and more Zarina, and Aloe, and a Heartleaf Philodendron, and then another Tradescantia, but a Nanook. Hey, one last thing that I needed to show you were my pots out front. Sometimes I forget because it's so disconnected from the rest of my front garden. But look at this first. Look at this beautiful grass. Pacific South Palisades zoysia. My husband takes care of it. We just got done with a fertilizing, and it just loves the Texas heat. But are these pots that I planted, a red, white, and blue theme. And here's how it's going. So this is Blue Days Evolvulus. And a gorgeous plant. Love it. On the other side is the exact same plant, but it's the Proven Winners variety. And the Proven Winners is Blew My Mind. And my experience has been, it just has not done as well as the regular Blue Days. That's just something that's happening for me. It's got some growth and a lot of new growth, but not a lot of blooms and just hasn't done well. And this is Red Salvia, which did amazing at first, but has petered out with the really, really hot temperatures. And the other one is the same. See, but the rock stars are these Vinca. Wow. I've had to kind of trim the Vinca back a little bit because it's been more vigorous than any other plant in this container. And I really wanted, this is, I hope I have it right, Luscious Royale Pina Colada Lantana, and I really expected this to be like the biggest plant in this container and then everything else kind of around it, and the Vinca just really want to take over. So I did cut them back a little bit, but it still looks, it's fantastic. It's reds, blues, whites, and yellows. I absolutely love that. And then this is the same container. This Luscious Royale Pina Colada Lantana has done better. It is bigger than the other one, and I still am cutting back the Vinca on each side, but here is again the Blue Days Evolvulus. I've got blooms almost non-stop and it's growing pretty big. The Red Salvia is petering out. Again on this side, Red Salvia petering out. And this is Blew My Mind Evolvulus from Proven Winners. Just love these containers. I think they add just a great touch of color to the front garden, and I'm just loving how things are turning out. And in the heat of summer, in 100-degree plus temperatures for almost a month now, I think everything is, for the most part, performing very, very well. I thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a chance to get out in your garden today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a beautiful day in your garden, and bye-bye.